MSNBC national security analyst, but of course a former FBI special agent, author of Messing with the Enemy, Surviving in a Social Media World of Hackers, Terrorists, Russians, and Fake News. And Clint, this isn't social media hacking. This is just good old-fashioned cell phone hacking. Just quickly explain to me the technology here. When we say the Chinese are listening in on his cell phone, so he's on there talking with Steve Schwarzman, his buddy, talking about high finance. Maybe they're talking about trade policy. Are they Chinese listening in real time? Walk us through the technological process.
Yeah, one of the weaknesses of our cell phone architecture is really the towers and the signals that traffic through them. So when we talk about hacking, we're not necessarily talking about this phone. They're not necessarily inside that phone. What they're doing instead is probably going through the network. Your signals actually go out on parallel networks when you make phone calls. One is the signal to make the call. The other one is the actual communication that follows along. What we always hear about, and if you remember back to the Edward Snowden leaks, it talked about how governments were tapping into each other's phones. You know, maybe we're listening to Angela Merkel or whoever it might be. What they do is they go in and they hack into the actual telephone networks, those towers and signals, and they intercept it. Because of the way the encryption was set up long ago, dating back to the 1990s and the early cell phone days, those networks were not that strong. And it used to be just the telecoms that controlled it.
Right.
But now with the internet, there are hundreds and thousands and millions of switches. Each is an entry point, and you can't secure all of those. There's essentially, you can double up on lines. And we've seen stories in the past where even U.S. officials, U.S. ambassadors, one was a U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, are essentially getting their calls intercepted and recorded, and then they are dumped out onto the internet. You never necessarily know who did the hacking, but that's essentially how it works. And I think in this case, when we're talking about the president's 3 cell phones, that's what's going on as well.
Ironically, he clearly knows he gets the warning. He did an interview with the Wall Street Journal last week, and he was talking about receiving an intelligence report on the Saudi investigation. And here's what he said in response to a question about the Saudis. He said, they have a lot of information. I actually said, don't give it to me on the phone. I don't want it on the phone, as good as these phones are supposed to be. And then there was laughter in the room. So he's been warned on this. He's doing it anyway. Look, presidents do that. They hate the contraptions. How hard is it to take a regular iPhone and make it secure and secure it from the Chinese? Or is it just something that it has to be a more sophisticated operation that the White House has to do?
Yeah, so if you go back to all presidents now in recent memory, or candidates for that matter, have wanted convenience over security. And if you remember, this was a big debate when President Obama took office. He was a BlackBerry addict, allegedly. You know, they told him he had to, remove it. He did ultimately, because I think he realized what was going on. And then they talked about giving President Obama a special iPhone, no microphone, no camera, no apps, no downloads, no music. It's basically just an encrypted phone that can communicate in a limited way. And if he needed to make a real call, he would probably always move to a landline or an assistance phone. In this case, the problem we have is the president likes to do what the president likes to do. And so he basically is the champion of indirect confessions, which is what that Wall Street Journal comment was. I know I'm not supposed to do this. But, one of the remarkable things I saw in the article is that it said that the president sometimes calls, like you had mentioned, Sean Hannity or Fox News correspondents, so that he can get around aides in the White House knowing what's going on. That means a foreign adversary maybe knows about the call and what was said on the call, and not the people in the White House. That's truly extraordinary and can be really tough from a defense standpoint. So any of these apertures, anything that's out there, we've said it, whether it's his tweets where we can really read his thoughts and sort of think about his psycholinguistics, to his potentially unsecure phone calls. It's an open door, and the goal, whether it's the Chinese or the Russians, is to influence the president through friends. I thought that was remarkable. It can happen on social media, and it can happen in real life through telephone calls as well.
Clint Watts, one thing we've learned about this president, he is the definition of open source. Every thought bubble, it all is, and maybe this is just an extension of that. Clint Watts, as always, sir, thanks for sharing your expertise and explaining it to us. Hello, YouTubers. If you're watching this, it means you've checked out our channel, so thank you. Now do me a favor, subscribe by clicking on that button down there. Click on any of the videos to watch the latest interviews and highlights from MTP Daily and MSNBC. You can get more Beat the Press content every morning in the First Read newsletter. If you're tired of content that you don't know anything about where it came from, you don't have to have that problem with us. NBC News, MSNBC, MTP and the Meet the Press mindset right here for you on YouTube. Subscribe now.